After studying this module, you shall be able to first, define the concept and nature of trade policy. Second, explain some of the most commonly used instruments of trade policy, tariff and non-tariff. Third, examine the impact of trade barriers on developing countries. Fourth, highlight India's experience with WTO dispute mechanism to alleviate trade policy concerns. Fifth, set forth strategies to be followed by developing countries to overcome trade barriers. Developing countries must overcome the international barriers in order to enhance their participation in global and regional trade. However, the important point to note is that barriers at the international trade policy level are to a great extent maximum in relation to products where developing countries have a relative advantage, especially on agricultural products. In general, such barriers are based on tariff accelerations, rules of origin, and trade distorting subsidies. In addition to this, non-tariff barriers also prevail in the form of environmental and labor standard along with sanitary measures related to food products. Overall, the instruments of trade policy being followed by developed countries, tariff and non-tariff, have distortionary effect in terms of economic cost, efficiency, resource allocation and social welfare of developing countries. Globalization requires free and fair trade practices which help expand the possibilities for flourishing global trade. Trade policy is a collection of rules and regulations which pertain to trade. It connotes standard goals, rules and regulations that cover trade relations among countries. Terms like import and export taxes, tariffs, inspection regulations and quotas are all part of a nation's trade policy. Safety is sometimes an issue in trade policy. Some of these policies are specific to each country. Their main objective is to enhance countries' foreign trade by fixing clear standards and goals for attracting potential trading partners. In the case of regional trade, groups of nations work together to create mutually beneficial trade policies. The dimensions and scope of trade policy is generally influenced by a number of parties involved in the policy. In this regard, one should consider the policy at different levels such as national, bilateral and international trade policies. All countries in consonance with their foreign policy have national policy to safeguard the best interest of their trade and citizens. International economic organizations favor free trade policies while developing countries prefer partially shielded trade policies to protect their domestic industries. When nations trade with each other regularly, they often establish trade agreements. Trade agreements smooth the way for trading, spelling out the desires of both sides to create a stronger, more effective trading relationship. Let us explore the concept of instruments of trade policy, tariffs and non-tariffs in detail. The relationship between business and government, particularly in the context of foreign trade, pertains to the relationship between national government and companies involved in foreign trade. The reasons for intervention by the government largely relate to protect their nation's economy and industry. Moreover, government have also the responsibility to promote and protect their cultural, economic, political and social framework and philosophies. In regard to international business, there are many important policy areas where governments need to intervene and create rules and regulations under their trade policies. Trade policies uses many instruments in the international trade. Tariffs. We need to be aware that tariffs can be of various types and consequently might have slightly different effects on the economy. The most common form of duty or tariff is the ad valorem, a tax assessed on merchandise value. Ad valorem tariffs are taxes levied as a fraction of the value of the imported goods. For example, a 20% ad valorem tariff on any product generates a rupees 20 payment on each imported item priced at rupees 100 in the world market. Specific duties are those charged by weight, volume, length, or any other unit, for example, charging rupees 1 per square yard on fabric. Specific tariffs, for example, specific tariff of rupees 10 on each imported item with an international price of rupees 100 means that the fixed sum of rupees 10 per item is collected.
A variation of the above tariffs may be called a compound duty. It is the combination of an ad valorem and a specific tariff. Compound duties use both an ad valorem and a specific duty on the same product. Alternative duties are those where the custom officials calculates the ad valorem duty and the specific duty and applies whichever is higher. In addition, a processing fee and a value added tax may be assessed on top of the duties plus an import processing fee, harbor tax, and other taxes. The important point to note is that today tariffs are viewed and used differently. Tariffs increase the price of imports, discourage their demand, and insulate domestic producers to a degree from foreign competition. As a result, each country places higher tariffs on goods determined to be import sensitive. Tariff interfere with the price mechanism, which in turn influences the supply and demand situation in international market. The effect of tariffs are generally analyzed with reference to production, consumption, government revenue, and income distribution. From the point of view of protection, tariffs may be classified into two: normal tariff and effective tariff. The former refers to the stated tariff rate or the tariff rate at its face value. This is by itself done not tell us anything about the degree of protection given to the industry. What we need to know is the real extent of protection or effective protection. This is indicated by the increase in the value added per unit, which is made possible by the entire tariff structure on both output and input of industry. This is measured by what is called effective rate of protection. Non-tariff measures are all form of discrimination against importers other than the import duties. It is to be noted that trade interventionist measures are not limited to tariff. There are various other instruments used in practice in order to limit trade. All such measures are not equally transparent. Some are easy to see, such as subsidies or quotas, while others are more difficult to trace down as they have a wide range from local content requirement to the need to exchange currencies for trade in an uncertain market. Non-tariff measure is any measure other than high import duties, tariff, employed to restrict imports. It encompasses a wide range of measures. Non-tariff barriers, with certain exceptions, are breach of WTO rules, but nevertheless their overall use has been on the increase. Such measures take the following forms: direct price influences, export subsidies, drawbacks, or countervailing duties, exchange rate manipulations, methods of import valuation, custom tariff barriers, lengthy custom procedures, establishment of minimum import prices, and unreasonable standards and inspection procedures. Indirect price influences are import licensing and related measures. Non-tariff barriers include mechanisms such as quotas, licenses, and monopoly right to import. Bernard, etc., have pointed out that non-tariff barriers encourage competing interests to lobby for import licenses, an activity known as rent seeking that wastes valuable resources. They also lack transparency and thereby may allow protection to escape scrutiny. Let us look at some of the important non-tariff measures, which are administrative policies. They are bureaucratic rules that are designed to make it difficult for imports to enter a country. In addition to the formal instrument of trade policy, government use informal or administrative policies to restrict import and boost exports. As with all instruments of trade, administrative instruments benefit producers and hurt consumers who are deprived of access to possibly superior foreign products. Anti-dumping measures. In the context of international trade, dumping is defined as selling goods in a foreign market at below their cost of production or as selling goods in a foreign market at below their fair market value. Fair market value of a good is normally judged to be greater than the cost of producing that good. Anti-dumping is used as a safeguard instrument where imports are sold for less than it's charged for them in the exporter's home market. That is, duties are imposed to offset price discrimination across market. Duty drawback scheme. Tariffs on import hurt exports in various ways, and countries have developed compensatory measures for exporters like duty drawback scheme involving the repayment of duties paid on imported inputs that are embodied in subsequent exports. With the export subsidy, shippers will export the good up to the point where the domestic price exceeds the foreign price by the amount of the subsidy. Countries have used such subsidies in part to offset the anti export bias created by other policies. While subsidies can stimulate exports, this may come at a huge cost to the budget. Yet there are instances where such subsidies may be justified. Export subsidies are the payment by the government to firms or individuals who sell goods abroad. Many countries provide export promotion assistance to their firms. Export subsidies are used to offset market failures. However, members of the WTO have become more constrained in the use of export subsidies. Export subsidies are not unusual and have been a major instrument used by the heavily protected agricultural sector in the European Union and the US. Import quotas. An import quota is a direct restriction on the quantity of a good that is imported. A quota is merely an upper limit expressed in either value or physical units on imports of a product for a given period. It is enforced through licenses issued to either importers or exporters and may be applied to imports from specific or from all foreign countries. An import quota always raises the domestic price of the imported good. The difference between a quota and a tariff is that with quota, the government receives no revenue. A local content requirement is a regulation that asks that a specified fraction of a final good be produced domestically. The requirement may be expressed either in physical terms, 75% of the component part for this product must be produced locally, or in value terms, 75% of the value of this product must be produced locally. It also tends to benefit producers and not customers. They have been used mainly in developing and developed countries. Local content laws have been widely used by developing countries trying to shift their manufacturing base from assembly into intermediate goods. However, they do not produce either government revenue or quota rents. Non-automatic import licensing. Such measures do not grant approval to import freely or automatically. There are two general categories of non-automatic licenses, which are discretionary licensing and export-import linkage scheme. Discretionary licensing, also known as liberal licensing, under which importers government approves a specific import. However, precise conditions to ensure approval are not specified. Generally, such form of licensing is used to control quantitative limits. On the other hand, export-import linkage scheme, export-import linkage requirements are numerous. Importers have to fulfill specific conditions such as minimum export performance, the use of the imported good for a specific purpose, or required purchases of domestic products. A firm's value of imported component is limited to a maximum percentage of the value of its exports. Variable export levies. Such levies are special charges sent to equalize the import price of a product with a domestic target price. These levies are kept variable to adjust with the movement of world price of the product. The objective is to avoid price changes in the world market effectively direct the domestic price.
The rising use of non-tariff measures. John Manzella has observed that unlike tariffs, non-tariff barriers are not easily quantifiable and are often hidden. Sometimes referred to as red tape, they typically include quotas, local content requirements and subsidies, or are disguised as legitimate licenses, standards and regulations, foreign investment restrictions, domestic government purchasing policies and exchange controls. In many sectors, environmental, labor, competitive policy and investment issues are increasingly used in an abusive manner to discourage imports. and at a time when it appears that foreign government subsidies for industry are decreasing, assistance by other means may be increasing, a hidden and non-quantifiable barrier to trade. Colin and Wood have characterized quotas, voluntary export restraints, non-automatic import authorizations and variable import levies as hardcore non-tariff measures which are designed to reduce imports and thereby benefit domestic producers. The trade performance of a country depends on the policy objectives that motivate a country's foreign trade. Manipulating pattern of trade may be a reasonable policy objective. The sectoral pattern of a country's trade is important from various points of view. It is important for growth if some sectors are drivers of technological improvement and subsequent economic growth. Geographical pattern indicates trade linkages to different regions of the world and helps to reflect on export promotion strategies. It is also a useful input in the analysis of regional integration. Tariffs or quantitative restrictions protect domestic industries and workers from foreign competition by raising the prices of imported goods. A combination of tariffs, quotas, and subsidies can serve economic and political objectives, but they can also impose significant cost. There is need to reduce trade barriers. However, reducing tariff and non-tariff barriers is not an easy task. It is because of decline in employment which tends to be concentrated and often make newspaper headlines. Despite the contemporary ongoing global trends to enhance economic liberalization that seek to do away with or reduce tariffs, there has also been a steady increase in the number of non-tariff measures. Tariff and non-tariff barriers have almost similar effects. They increase domestic prices and hamper trade to protect preferred producers at the expense of domestic consumers. Many non-tariff barriers discriminate among a country's trading partners. The use of non-tariff barriers has increased distinctly in recent years. They are much more elusive and disguised. Their effect, however, can be more disturbing because they are unfamiliar quantity and not easy to predict. The chances for reversal of this trend appear to be limited because their adverse effects are generally less obvious to consumers than the effects of tariffs.
Developed and developing country interests differ. According to World Bank, developed countries are less sensitive to manufactured import and consequently maintain low tariff levels on manufactured goods. However, due to their high sensitivity to agricultural imports, higher tariff levels are applied on agricultural goods. In fact, the average tariff protection on agricultural goods is 9 times higher than on manufactured goods. On average, developing countries apply tariffs on industrial products are 3 to 4 times as high as those of industrial countries, but their tariff levels on agricultural products are even higher. Trade restrictions are a major impediment to development efforts. Developing countries are unable to sell their products abroad because of high tariff and quotas. Additionally, their domestic markets are flooded by cheaper, subsidized products from abroad. In anticipation of reduction in tariffs and non-tariff barriers, they have come under increasing scrutiny in recent years. Developing countries are very much concerned with the prevailing non-tariff measures because exporters and importers consider these as major impediments to international trade, preventing market access to them. They generally do not have the required information, capabilities, and facilities. Moreover, complying with the complex requirement of NTMs is not easily available and comes at a considerable cost. In this context, it is interesting to note that the International Trade Center's program on NTMs aims at increasing transparency and it is engaged in a multi agency initiative that assists countries in finding solutions tailored to meet their specific needs. Disputes in the WTO are essentially about broken promises. Domestic law is frequently at issue in disputes. The dispute settlement mechanism enhances equality between developing member countries and developed ones. Under the DSM, developing countries now are much more frequently taken to court by developed countries as the percentage of developed countries as complaints and developing countries as defendants increase considerably. India has been an active participant in DSM, having been involved as a complainant, defendant, or as third party where panels have been established. The impact of DSM can be understood on the developing countries like India with the help of cases being referred under the substantial issues like most favored nation treatment, the national treatment, quantitative restrictions, agriculture, textiles and clothing, patent protection, the environment, trade related investment measures, etc. India has been an active participant in the system. India has been a complainant in 17 cases. India has also been a respondent in 17 cases, and as a third party, India has been acting in 46 cases. India has been involved in a number of major cases with mixed results. It is interesting that the EC is the main complainant against India, followed by the US. India has brought cases against a number of countries, but again, mainly against the US and the EC. Despite favorable provisions, developing countries still do not enjoy a really neutral playing field where they can really trade equitably and efficiently with developed states. Developing countries are not able to fully take advantage of the DSM in practice because of the unevenness of the political power between developed states and developing countries. The latter group is in a disadvantageous position in the DSM given the political pressures they may suffer outside the WTO. The developing countries' lower status is also due to their inadequate capability to enforce the dispute settlement result, even if the outcomes are favorable to them. Thus, in the practice of DSM, developing countries are not enjoying a really equal status as developed states do. In sum, there remains much to be done. Perhaps the greatest challenge now facing the WTO is the further integration of developing countries into the multilateral trading system. With the erosion of tariffs and the greater use of non tariff barriers to trade product standards, investment requirements, environmental and social standards, and competition policies, there will be a need to ensure that countries' interests can be pursued and protected. India's experience in overcoming some of the legal and institutional shortcomings in the matter of WTO dispute settlement is an interestingly case study.
India lost a few important cases such as mailbox, that is India patents, and the balance of payment, that is India QR. In the decade of the late 1990s, the political overtones of which were felt for a long time, India relied on outside legal expertise for defending its interests in WTO dispute settlement, and the cost involved in hiring external resources were often highlighted by opponents of trade and economic liberalization in India to argue against India's participation in the WTO and the numerous trade agreements it administered. However, times have changed. India is now in a much better position to engage its own domestic lawyers and law firms in WTO dispute settlements. More recently, WTO cases involving India have exhibited a bottom up approach of stakeholder participation where the government's role is to greater extent that of a handmaiden in meeting stakeholder demands. All these developments show how the WTO has shaped Indian strategies to engage with international dispute settlement. While glancing through the India's use of WTO dispute settlement system, we can see that the country was fairly active in all spheres, whether it is in case of disputes or in case of negotiations and reviews. On disputes, India has lost many cases but has equally won few important cases against its major trading partners, quite a few of which are considered as landmark decisions in WTO. About half of the cases in which India was a party were related to measures restricting textile and clothing exports, which is India's major export sector. In addition, EU and US have been the other party in most of these disputes, both of which are India's major export market. Regarding the types of measures that have been challenged, almost half of them have been trade remedy measures. This is consistent with India's negotiating position calling for the restrictions on use of trade remedies. Overall, India has been able to make rather effective use of the WTO dispute settlement system to pursue issues that matter to it. India is widely considered as one of the most successful developing country users of the WTO dispute settlement system. A network community of government officials, think tanks, and WTO lawyers have also helped in strategizing effectively for WTO disputes. The involvement of industry associations such as TexProsil, SEAI, and MPEDA have directly helped India in playing a crucial role in shaping WTO jurisprudence by bringing violation of WTO obligations of other members to the notice of governmental authorities. These cases demonstrate a bottom-up approach of stakeholder participation where the government's role is more of a handmaiden in meeting stakeholders' demand. This is a marked difference from India's experience in the early days of WTO dispute settlement. India's challenge in the future will be to sustain the capacity already built. Trade disputes are cyclical and it may require positive intervention on the part of the government to foster and nourish trade related capacity.
Before adopting any strategy of intervention, it is important to understand the nuisance of different trade control instruments by making distinction between the two types of instrument that differ in their effects. Instruments that indirectly influence the amount traded by directly influencing the prices of exports or imports. Instruments that directly limit the amount of a good that can be traded. Trade policies of government affect foreign countries and may take various forms. The foreign government generally retaliate, which may hinder to achieve the desired objectives. As such, it is important to weigh the choice of different instruments of trade control. This is because use of each type of control instrument may provoke different reaction from both domestic and foreign companies. The political realities of the world suggest that as rule of the game, plenty of trade barriers exist. Although some are being dismantled, many will remain. The major barriers to trade are becoming increasingly covert, that is non-tariff barriers, which are very difficult to overcome. There are various reasons for different experts making different assessments. This is because newly introduced protectionist measures are mostly unconventional and subtle, so they are not easily quantifiable. Catherine Berensman and Clara Brandy have highlighted the conclusion of various studies that not only tariff and non-tariff trade barriers but also other instruments harm the commercial interest. Such discrimination is called murky protectionism. It is pointed out that the WTO rules are weaker than they should be, so new questions arise for the multilateral trade system. They need to be reviewed. New WTO rules on murky protectionism would help to reduce the asymmetry between developing and developed countries. Multilateral trade rules must be strengthened. The majority of developing countries should increase regional economic integration and thereby increase the potential for specialization and economic growth as well as enhancing the region's competitiveness on the global market. Both international and regional economic interactions are required for improving participation in global trade. The majority of developing countries should increase regional economic integration and thereby increase the potential for specialization and economic growth as well as enhancing the region's competitiveness on the global markets. Both international and regional economic integration are required for improving participation in global trade.
Trade policy comprises all the government's policies and decisions concerning the magnitude, composition, direction, and nature of the country's international trade and investment. It includes inter alia, tariff policy, exchange rate policy, subsidies, attracting foreign investors, macroeconomic, fiscal, and monetary policies. All countries have many reasons for wishing to have trade relations with each other. However, it is also true to say that all importing countries take steps to restrain the inward flow of goods and services. With worldwide increase in trade, the regulations and barriers to trade are also on the increase. Since all countries control their foreign trade, they vary in terms of the degree of control. Always set up trade laws that favor their indigenous companies and discriminate against foreign ones. Government state policy interventions take many forms. They may impose tariffs and quotas, restriction on international investment, bureaucratic procedures and red tape, and regulations that restrict types of business and value chain activities. In addition, government can provide subsidies and financial incentives intended to sustain domestic firms and industries. There are various ways to build a barrier. Such practices are grouped into tariff and non-tariff barrier. The economic effect of non-tariff barriers to trade are roughly similar to those of tariffs. There is a wide range of non-tariff barriers. Since a country's trade policy has repercussions abroad, it is important to have a proper choice of the instruments of trade control because each type may encourage different reactions from domestic and foreign business. Developing countries are facing a greater degree of barriers at the international trade policy, especially on products where many developing countries would have good opportunities to compete internationally. High tariff barrier is a particular problem for agricultural exports of developing countries.